This is The Roger Stone Show.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone, right here on The Roger Stone Show. This is the segment we call the Political Roundtable. Joining me now, the editor and publisher of Slingshot.news, Troy Smith. Troy, first I wanted to get your thoughts on the incredible re-examination of one Richard Milhous Nixon, the phenomena known online as Nixon maxing. Now, I know among our older listeners, they're going to be, I would say, pretty polarized. There are going to those who still hate Tricky Dick and think that he was a criminal who caused the greatest single constitutional crisis in our history. Others realize he was a dedicated American and anti-communist, was among our greatest presidents. But now an entire new, younger generation of Americans get introduced to Richard Nixon without all that backstory, and hopefully they can now focus on his actual accomplishments as president.
Well, absolutely, Roger. And when we look at those accomplishments, they are vast. I think the proof in Nixon is the length to which the deep state, the same deep state that attempted to oust President Donald Trump with impeachment in the first term, in his first term, whether it be, the deep state that has done so much over the years here, that same deep state went to great lengths to make sure that Richard Nixon was not going to be president anymore. And that alone tells you that his impact was tremendous. And I think the Nixon foreign policy that we saw during his administration has kind of been proliferated throughout the administration's following. This is policy, Roger, that has become part of basically every administration, whether it be his policy on China or the idea that he prevented conflict and tried to end conflict and did in many instances. I think, Roger, you know it best that Richard Nixon is one of the best presidents in the history of our country. And the proof there is that they tried to get rid of him because, as we know, with President Donald Trump, every time that somebody stands in the way of those who want to sell out our country, those who want to make sure that our industries leave our shores for foreign nations, that we are taken advantage of at every turn, the Obamas, the Clintons, those people are fine with that. You notice they stayed in office. There were no scandals. They barely even, with Obama, he claims famously no scandals. As we know, not the truth. But my point is that they push these things under the rug for people that do their bidding. Richard Nixon did not do their bidding, and it's why he had to be destroyed. You know that better than anybody, Roger.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was working for both Donald Trump and Richard Nixon, they met each other for the first time. It was in George Steinbrenner's box at Yankee Stadium on opening day. And I heard from both of them afterwards. But it was Nixon first who said, well, I met your friend Trump. I said, what did you think, sir? He said, very impressive, very impressive. If he ever decided to get into politics, he could go all the way. I said, well, do you mean be elected governor? He said, no, I mean all the way. And of course, that very day, he wrote a letter which has been published by the New York Times directly to Trump, telling him that if he pursued a political career, that he would be successful, and that President and Mrs. Nixon had watched Trump, I think it was on the Mike Douglas show, were very impressed with him. And of course, Trump has spoken about his admiration and his understanding of Nixon. I do see a lot of the same quality, the strength, the indestructibility, the indefatigability of both of them. So I think you make an excellent point. Let's move to modern day politics. You've written an incredible piece on Mitch McConnell. Now, I honestly don't know whether Mitch McConnell, the senator from Kentucky, the longest serving majority leader of the Senate, no longer majority leader, I have no idea whether he is still with us or not. They have produced these photographs of him, but the photographs are immediately picked apart by online sleuths using AI and pointing out that they appear to have been created using artificial intelligence. That's a good place to start. Troy, do you have any theory as to whether the senator is really with us? It's possible, of course, that he's physically alive. In other words, they're keeping him on artificial respiration, but he may no longer be with us mentally, or perhaps he's in terrific shape. I really don't know. But I find it suspicious. Why would you not just hold a press conference and let the press see you and announce that you're fine if you are indeed fine?
Well, that's exactly right, Roger. And we've seen this with the president. We know that there are certain measures that can be taken to, take action against the president who is deemed by his cabinet and members of Congress being not of sound mind. But I'm not aware of any stipulation that allows us to do the same thing for sitting members of Congress. We've seen this problem time and time again, whether it was Dianne Feinstein or others that are in office for extended periods of time where we're not really even sure if they're alive or not. The truth is, Roger, you're exactly right. We don't know whether Mitch McConnell is alive or dead, but we do know that in the last few years of the votes that he's taken, he has taken ardent stances against President Donald Trump. And in this crucial time, Roger, I think the mainstream media is, for the most part, Democrats are depicting this as, oh, this is going to help Republicans. Well, if we look at Mitch McConnell's voting history in the last year, he has not been a pro-Trump Republican. He's been actually an anti-Trump Republican, siding with Democrats on key legislation. So with the Save America Act looming, with all this stuff kind of up in the air, I believe McConnell is being kept around, whether that's alive or dead, to be a useful tool for the people that he has been a useful tool for his entire career. And I know we're going to get into that more here now, but throughout his career, Roger, Mitch McConnell has taken every step necessary to destroy America's industry. When we drive through America today and we see emptied factories and bombed out buildings that once stood as industry, the bleeding heart of America, the beating heart of America, that heart is dead because of Mitch McConnell, who has allowed China to rape this country over and over and over again with economic policies that allow them to come in, undercut our industry, and basically allow them to do this over an extended period of time. I don't know how far we want to get into the weeds right now, but we could go back to 2000, where Mitch McConnell takes a vote to allow China into the World Trade Organization, paving the way for that. He also, in that bill, allows China to have lowered tariffs on key industries. And it's not until President Trump emerges in 2018 that McConnell takes this big stance on tariffs. Oh, Trump can't put tariffs on the people. He said he's scared about the way that tariffs are being used. Well, that's because these are a response to China's taking of our industry, using their own tariffs to flood our markets with cheap products that America can't compete with and Americans can't compete with. So when Donald Trump comes along and takes a stand against Mitch McConnell and these Republicans who have done this for decades on end, that's when they have the problem, Roger. And if we're just going back to that 2025 vote, Mitch McConnell voted with Democrats and with several other Republicans to take away President Trump's power to levy tariffs. And we're going to get into the China connections here today. But if we want to talk about what Mitch McConnell's useful for today, it's not for President Trump. And I just want to get your thoughts on that, because he's betrayed us, I think, at every level here.
No, as you point out, that early in his career, he was a county judge before being elected to the United States Senate. That was in 1985. And early in his career, he was a pretty hardline anti-communist, anti-Chinese communist, pretty much your standard conservative Republican from the border south. But he was also, at the time of his election, worth between $200,000 and $300,000. Today, according to his financial disclosures, he's worth $35 million. That's kind of curious. But then the change in his public positions, the change in his positions in the U.S. Senate, all seem to begin when he marries Elaine Chao. Now, Elaine Chao was the longest-serving member of the Bush cabinet, where she served as labor secretary. Then, after Mitch McConnell talked Donald Trump into it, she served as the transportation secretary in Donald Trump's first term. But as you point out, and I was pretty surprised to see, Elaine Chao has some very, very close ties to the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, absolutely, Roger. Her father is a man named James C. Chang Chao. He founded a shipping company called the Foremost Group. It is an international shipping company founded in 1964. This is no small shipping company, Roger. They have 30 cargo ships worldwide, and the company is worth $1.2 billion. This is a guy that was a classmate, a schoolmate of a man named Jiang Zemin, who was a CCP general secretary and actually served as the president of China. That's just her father, Roger. If we look at her sister, who passed away in 2024, and what many have reached out to me following this piece and saying very questionable death with Angela Chao, who died in a car accident in 2020.
We seem to have. It's interesting reading here from the work of our guest, Troy Smith. Angela Chao served on the board of the City Holding Company of the China State Shipbuilding Corporation, a major Chinese state-owned defense conglomerate central to the People's Republic of China. This would have been the sister-in-law to Senator Mitch McConnell. The Chao family is extremely wealthy, influential, with serious direct ties to national security elements within the Chinese Communist Party. So when you understand where Elaine Chao comes from, perhaps you now understand where Mitch McConnell's views have shifted. It is pretty well known that they were introduced by a man named Stu Block. Stu Block is a longtime friend of Mitch McConnell's. He's a real estate expert with extreme political influence. They were married, and almost immediately, Stu Block's wife was appointed to a post as ambassador to Nepal by George H.W. Bush. Troy, you are back with us.
Absolutely, Roger. And the company here is major. They have major ties with Angela Chao to the China State Shipbuilding Corporation, which builds ships for the People's Liberation Army Navy. So we're talking about major defense organizations linked to Elaine Chao's sister, their father also being the head of a major shipping company that is also tied to the CCP. And when we examine how these people were even introduced, Roger, we come across another individual named Julie Chang Block, married to a Stu Block. That's the couple that introduced Elaine Chao. Julie Chang Block is the mentor of Elaine Chao. It's how the connection was made. And she's linked to USAID, who was exposed by Elon Musk as being completely fraudulent. She served as a senior role at USAID. Not only that, Roger, but she's actually the founder of the United States China Education Trust, which routinely attacks President Trump for his tariff policies towards China. So across the board here, Chang Block is also a Chinese immigrant, came from China. These people have heavy ties in every way to the CCP. They have heavy ties to Chinese military intelligence officials. And to suggest Mitch McConnell goes from $200,000 worth in 1984 to then $35 million in 2026. How did he get that money? Well, he got it from the family of Elaine Chao, who I've just laid out for you here, Roger, is completely intertwined with the CCP and military operations over in China. You couldn't have a more compromised individual, and you have to ask, how has this not come up? It's been pretty open knowledge. I want to get your thoughts on that as somebody who's been around politics for a long time. People know that China Mitch is a real thing. This guy has serious ties to China, no?
This is why people need to go to slingshot.news, where you have written extensively. It's the first time I've ever seen all of this laid out in such a logical and documented way. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and we'll be right back with more politics on the other side.
This is The Roger Stone Show.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi. Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back in the Stone Zone right here on the Roger Stone Show. We're talking to Troy Smith, the editor and publisher of Slingshot.news. Troy, it's strange because without any question, without Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump could not have avoided impeachment. Without Mitch McConnell, he could not have confirmed the Supreme Court justices that were confirmed, although at least one of them, I think, was a mistake, perhaps two. But in both those cases, Mitch McConnell did his party duty. Now you have a situation under which were the seat to be vacated, in other words, were Mitch McConnell to resign or be declared deceased, the governor would be allowed to appoint someone to fulfill the rest of the term. The rest of the term only runs until January of next year. But as long as he is technically still alive, that seat remains in Republican hands, although Mitch McConnell has not showed up to vote quite some time. The Republicans have already nominated Andy Barr, who's a congressman from the 6th District of Kentucky, with the endorsement of President Donald Trump. So there's no doubt in a state as red a state as Kentucky will hold this seat. But I'm wondering whether this entire charade is really built around just avoiding the appointment of a Democrat senator, because the governor of Kentucky is a Democrat, whether that is perhaps what's really going on here.
The seat stays Republican as long as McConnell's
There's a real chance that that's the case, Roger. And I want to point out here, though, that the crux of this story, and I think the real point that we want to hammer across to people is that just because Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell are Republicans doesn't mean that they agree on everything. And when you read this article, Roger, as I know you did, and so many people have reached out over this, you find the steps that Mitch McConnell and Republicans in what we would call the Rhino class, what they did to carve up this country prior to Trump being the only person in American politics to have the guts to stand up to them and speak out against the unbelievable trade deficits during the first time he ran for president, his first campaign. He's the only person, to my knowledge, to this date, that has had the guts to call them out for what they did in carving up this country. And I think when we get down to the crux of what they are and what they support, it is imperative when we're looking at Mitch McConnell's successor, whoever that may be, that they are going to be somebody that represents the wing of the party that sent Donald Trump to the White House in 2024 with one of the most resounding election victories we've ever seen, with 7 swing state victories. It's Trumpism that achieved that, not the rhinoism of Mitch McConnell. And I want to just make that clear that Republican, Democrat, we can get into the politics of this, and yes, there is a Democrat governor, and I think you're exactly right that Republicans will maintain or retain that seat in the coming election. But the point is, when you have a situation where we're picking a successor, it has to be somebody who is truthfully going to represent that wing of the party instead of the wing that, like I said, sold out this country, carved up our industry, and created this crisis. You know, there's so many jobs, Roger, that were lost, of the 5 million manufacturing jobs that were lost as a result due to this the policy. That's 5 million people who went on to be hooked on opiates or turned to lives of crime or any of the number of problems that plague the middle of this country. Those people are in that situation because of people like Mitch McConnell. And I would like to see, and I know you would like to see too, a Republican Party that represents those people and their interests and doesn't continue to sell them out to foreign interests for whatever reason it may be. And when you examine this record of Mitch McConnell and his ties to China through Elaine Chao, his rise in monetary and in his wealth and all that, coupled with the policies that have allowed China to do what they've done, I don't think that there truthfully is an excuse for it. It is terrible, and it's a true betrayal, not just of the American way, but of the American people, especially in Kentucky. I mean, I just can't imagine a worse fate for those people than to have somebody who's so against the American ideal. And whoever does replace McConnell, I hope, if it is Andy Barr, I have confidence that he will be a much better representative of what we want the Republican Party to look like going forward. I'd like to get your thoughts on that as well.
To the SAVE Act, I think, speaks volumes. That's not a trade policy. Now, I think Republicans can have legitimate differences on trade policy. Our party's always had more than one wings. But opposition to the SAVE Act, which is a simple provision that says you have to be a U.S. citizen and you have to have a photo ID to vote, you can only oppose that out of your hatred for Donald Trump and your hatred for the country. All right, we have to leave it there. I want to thank our guest, Troy Smith. Go to slingshot.news to check out his writing. Until next week, God bless you and Godspeed.